Hello, my name is Ashton, and today we're going to be discussing on our Church History 2 historical presentation, the life and ministry of Charles Haddon Spurgeon. Charles Spurgeon was born on June 19th of 1834 in a small village of Kelvedon in the United Kingdom in England. Scholars show that he was actually born into a family already serving in ministry. His grandfather and father had both served as preachers. Now we see that in today's society, we might not see him having much education, but for his time in the mid-19th century, he did study at local schools and received tutorings in various arts such as Greek, though he never received a formal college education. Charles Spurgeon served as the longtime pastor of a church in London, starting out with the name New Park Street Chapel, but 2 years into his ministry, changed their name to the Metropolitan Tabernacle. Here's where Charles Spurgeon would serve over 38 years, the majority of his ministry. Charles Spurgeon died on January 31st, 1892, in Menton, France, at the young age of 57. We see that Charles Spurgeon converted to Christianity at 16 years old in what a lot call to be a snowstorm. They say he was converted in the midst of a snowstorm by a Methodist layman. Only a month later would Charles Spurgeon preach his first sermon, and a year later he would become a pastor of a church at the young age of 17. From there, 2 years later, at the age of 19, he would become the pastor of New Park Street Chapel in London. Spurgeon taught to teach God's word and doctrine to the best of his ability. Though he had no theological training, he taught God's word with grace and power. One article I studied describes him having a dramatic teaching flair, saying that he would pace around the platform, acting out biblical stories, and fill his sermons with sentimental tales of dying children, grieving parents, and repentant harlots. Now I can almost picture my own grandfather preaching in such fervor and passion, pacing about, and I can see almost in my head the great Charles Spurgeon doing that. He's considered great, and even some people consider Charles Spurgeon the prince of preachers, because over the course of his life, it's said that he taught over 3,600 sermons to nearly 10 million listeners. We see the impact of his life and ministry is still evident today, with many of his sermons being documented via text. We see here the Soul Winner, which discusses how to win souls to Christ. Sermon's very passionate and talks about sermons likely to win souls, obstacles you'll face when winning souls to Jesus, encouragement to those seeking to win souls. It says he was one of the most famous preachers of the world, and still today we study him, learn from him, and hear his teaching of God's word via books. In addition to his incredible life that happened in the pulpit, we see that Spurgeon lived an incredible life of serving people. He opened up many almshouses, orphanages, and a pastor's college, which is still around today. You see, many people opposed Charles Spurgeon's dramatic teaching flair. They said that some of this was distracting to the gospel, that it was distracting to the gospel, that it might have been demonic. But Charles Spurgeon, even though he had no theological training, he was passionate. He was fired up about what the gospel said and about saving people, saving their souls to Christ. Charles Spurgeon also struggled with what most would call today as clinical depression. We see his wife wrote in letters and documented many times this depression that he had from various family issues that happened, sicknesses, illnesses. But though he struggled with clinical depression in today's world, We see that Charles Spurgeon lived a life of joy where he loved celebrating. Many people considered him incredibly happy, full of life. He lived a life of joy. Now, one of the most interesting and maybe well-known aspects of Charles Spurgeon's ministry is from a strongly worded article that he wrote in The Sword and the Trowel, where he speaks and warns against the downgrade of the Baptist faith. In short, he claims that they were downgrading their outlook on the Bible by allowing Darwin's theory of evolution, different hypotheses, and other concepts to affect their ministry. These, in Spurgeon's eyes, were weakening the Baptist Union, where he strongly worded a theory of downgrade. As a result, Spurgeon disaffiliated his church from the Union, making it the largest self-sustaining church at the time. At this point in the ministry is where the church would change names in London from New Park Street Chapel to the Metropolitan Tabernacle. You see, Charles Spurgeon's life is one that still many consider to study and be evident today. I know myself as a young pastor, I can learn a lot from Charles Spurgeon's strict and not afraid of the doctrine of Jesus Christ. He doesn't water anything down. I know that I've learned quite a bit from my study of Charles Spurgeon, and that even though he's passed away, he's been gone for over 120 years, that his life and ministry is still relevant to this day. And I believe that pastors and ministers, theologians and teachers all across the world can learn a lot from the theologian of Charles Haddon Spurgeon. Thank you, and God bless.